Hello, good morning. Welcome to the Sunday Supplement. Coming up on today's show, it's Judgment Day. Manchester City or Liverpool will be crowned Premier League champions. It's been a remarkable Champions League week, but why is Mauricio Pochettino talking about leaving Tottenham as they prepare to face Jurgen Klopp's side in Madrid next month? And Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, he's preparing to trim the fat from Manchester United's squad ahead of his first full season in charge at Old Trafford. Fit for purpose this morning. Martin Samuel is the chief sports writer at The Mail. Steve Bates is chief football writer at The People, and Jonathan Northcroft is the football correspondent at The Sunday Times. Morning, guys. Thanks very much for joining us here this morning. Don't forget, you can tweet the show. Tweet us at Sunday Sup. The best will appear on screen over the next 90 minutes. OK, let's have a look at the papers then. Dominated by one story, of course. It's the final day shootout. Brighton play Manchester City, Liverpool at home to Wolves. Pep's dream, which is, of course, to defend the Premier League title this afternoon. They're in action at the Amex snooze control. Pep says he's sleeping like a baby ahead of today's final Premier League game. It's been a big season for them. The crown is in your hands. Win today, they win the Premier League title. Don't mention the score on the back page of The Sun, who say this story, today's Judgment Day, dominated by events at City and Liverpool, which we're coming on to first thing this morning. Andy Dunn's column in the Sunday Mirror this morning, brilliant. Pep, he makes his stars shine like no other boss in the Premier League. He's relied on a few of his old guard this season to get them into the position which they are. The Observer this morning as well, they say that this is the greatest title race in Premier League history, which is where we'll start, Martin, because it has been a fascinating tussle between these two brilliant sides. We'll talk about Liverpool's Champions League win as well in a few moments' time. But let's first talk about the title race. Right. Is this the greatest title race that you have covered as a journalist?
Yes. Yeah, I think so. Certainly of the modern era, because there have been fabulous finishes to a season before, Liverpool and Arsenal and the Michael Thomas one. And if you think about how that season ended up, it must have been neck and neck all the way through. We've seen neck and neck title races. Everyone Grant's season with Chelsea, it could have gone either way on the last day of the season. And there's been a few years, I mean, you're never going to get a tighter finish than the Aguero goal that changed everything with the last kick. But what's different about this is the quality of the title race. So it's not just about it being close. It's about the two teams being so damn good. And I think you've got to go back to Arsenal and Leeds, I think, in the double-winning season. If you extrapolate the points in the double-winning season, you've got two teams in the 90s. I mean, obviously, it was 2 points for a win there, so it's 65, 63 or whatever it is. But if you extrapolate the wins and everything, you go two teams in the 90s. But number one, it's a 42-game season as opposed to a 38-game season, so they've got a lot more games to get to the 90s. And number two, it's still the low 90s. This is high 90s. This is two teams with high 90s points. And you can say it's not good for the rest of the league in terms of the gap, which is a sort of point that Rafa Benitez was making last week, that, you know, it's great to have two teams that are really strong, but when they're so far away from everybody else, that's you know, that's problematic. But I don't think that's going to happen year on year. I think you're just looking at an exceptional year and you take it as an exceptional year. And without a doubt, Manchester City and Pep Guardiola have driven this. They have changed the numbers in English football. They have changed what it means to have a good season. They have changed what it means to go to places like Manchester United and suddenly you've got to win. Suddenly you've got to win. I mean, Liverpool play, I think it's Arsenal, and Lacazette scores with 8 minutes to go. And this is back in October, I want to say it's back in October. And if you look at that, that's the title. That right there, a 1-1 draw at Arsenal, which in previous years, in any previous year, you get a 1-1 draw at Arsenal. Ask any manager, would you take 1-1 at Arsenal? Yeah, I'd take it tomorrow. And suddenly, you can look back on that and go, that Lacazette goal is the difference between Liverpool leading the league by a point this morning, and if Liverpool led the point league by a point this morning, we would all be tipping Liverpool.
Yeah. Or you could go back Merseyside derby, couldn't you?
You could go back. I think there's 8 matches with Liverpool, and any one of those is the league. Leicester, West Ham away, 1-1 draw at Chelsea. Although to be fair, they're the ones who score late in that one. But there's 8 games, and obviously the main ones being the 2 Manchester City matches. But there's 8 games, and if any one of those goes the other way, Liverpool win the league.
Yeah.
Probably.
We love a bit of nostalgia, but also, of course, we're living in the present, Steve. So, is this the most compelling simply because it's the one we're living through now? Or Martin mentioned Michael Thomas's goal for Arsenal up at Anfield. I always think of the Brian Kidd moment at Old Trafford when he races onto the pitch with Bruce's header against Sheffield Wednesday.
Yeah.
Does that memory play tricks with us, or is this the defining title race? Is this the one that we'll look back on in our career, in our own careers, and say, OK, this was the one?
Listen, I think we all sort of are in the moment, aren't we? And we all believe this is the best, and the next great goal you'll see will always be the best goal you've ever seen. So I think we've got to temper that slightly because there have been great races. Martin alluded to the Aguero sort of 93 minutes 20-second goal in. When United had done their job up at Sunderland and then City nicked the league off. That was a fantastic title race, and that was won on goal difference. This will probably be won by a point. So if you're talking about margins, then you would have to say the Aguero season, in terms of margins, is much closer. But I think these 2 teams this season, Liverpool and City, have just set an unbelievably high standard. They've kind of redefined the benchmark really for excellence in an era where the game is so quick and intense, and there's so much kind of emphasis on fitness, and the way Liverpool and City perform is just off the scale. It is just off the scale compared with when you compare this with maybe even 10, 15 years ago. It's just a different level, and Liverpool probably are going to miss out today because they lost at Manchester City, which in itself is no disgrace. And you're looking back, as you've just done there, they had a 0-0 draw at Everton early in the season. They drew 0-0 Liverpool at Old Trafford. On the face of it, half-decent results in a derby and a game at Old Trafford. Yet it's not good enough. And that's why I think there's been a redrawing of the whole rule book this season. And City could end up with, over 2 seasons, 198 points. That's utterly mind-boggling. 198 points in 2 seasons. Astonishing they've come. I mean, people said last year they'd never get to 100 points again. They've come within 2 of it.
They could end up with 196 and not win the league.
Yeah,
if they get 196, they're not going to win the league. They're not going to win the league. Yeah. They're not going to retain the league.
Liverpool being punished for losing at Man City.
Yeah. John, you did the Dream Double on Friday, didn't you? You went to Jurgen Klopp's press conference, and then I saw you at Pep's. How do you assess the moods in the respective camps? Because Liverpool were coming back off a euphoric week, a euphoric victory, and a remarkable victory. And Klopp, of course, was the architect of that against Barcelona on Tuesday night at Anfield. How did you judge the 2 moods of the respective teams?
Yeah, well, I mean, a lot of the back pages have gone with Pep talking about sleeping like a baby, and funnily enough, Klopp said pretty much exactly the same thing in his broadcast section of his press conference. And for 2 teams that are involved in such an intense race, there was a huge sense of relaxation and pleasure from the managers, and I think that's one of the things that's so compelling about the race. It's 2 teams of the highest technical and tactical level, but the highest mental level as well. The way those managers prepare them, the way those 2 coaches exude the right kind of stuff every week to their players, and the players then mirror that on the pitch, is extraordinary. And I would say both managers were setting the ideal tone coming into a weekend like we have now. I think Liverpool's mood was changed by the Barcelona result, because what that means is that nightmare prospect of their season finishing today, this incredible season finishing with, I suppose, an anticlimax that it would have been if there hadn't been the Champions League final. That's been averted now. They know that whatever happens today, they've got this great achievement that will never be taken away from them against Barcelona, and they've got a Champions League final to look forward to. So there's a sense that it's almost a freebie for them today. Don't get me wrong, if they won the league today, it would go down as probably their greatest season, and it'd be celebrated. But if they don't, I think their supporters will be quite stoical about it, and they'll crack on and they'll look to Madrid. And Pep, for somebody who drives himself so hard, we know how relentless he is as a person, but it was among the most relaxed I've ever seen him. He just seemed to be so confident in his team, so kind of undoubting about them, because every week they've shown him the stuff that he needs on the pitch, and he just didn't seem to have any fears going into today. And it's just compelling how these two guys can maintain that pitch every single week. They've been exceptional as well as their teams.
Also, what is it compelling also, because we talk about the dynamic between these two teams, but there hasn't been any real needle between the two managers. It's been almost...
John was talking there, you're thinking...
It's almost complete respect between these two sides.
If Jose was in a race like this, there would be... Even Fergie. I mean, Fergie by now would have found a way of ramping it up and stuff.
So why haven't these two guys... Why hasn't someone gone for it and said, OK, let's needle?
They're different guys. They're different sort of guys. And even the times you've seen sort of quotes from Guardiola that might seem as if they're sort of aggressive towards Liverpool, really it's not probably how he meant it. It might be something, you know, it might come across that he's, oh, well, the pressure's all on, you know, it's easy when you're chasing or whatever. He doesn't mean that as a dig at Liverpool. He's just talking about the difficulty of being the front runner all the time, and it is hard to win from the front. It is a brave position to take. And so I just don't think they're those sort of guys. I would like to say one thing about that first question you asked me. I would like to clarify just one thing. This is the greatest... I do think this is the greatest title race. The greatest thing I've ever seen in all football is Leicester winning the league. So, you know, I mean, it wasn't a race. That's the greatest thing I've ever seen in football, because that was something you never thought you'd see, and even 100 points was something you didn't think you'd see, but it was always a chance that one team would come along and they would be so wonderful that they'd get 100 points, particularly with money playing such an important part now. Leicester is the greatest thing I've ever seen in football.
Invincible.
Sorry, Karen.
No.
I was thinking to myself, I haven't put Leicester in there.
No, but the 2016, it's almost the forgotten title, the forgotten title-winning team. So much so that John wrote a book.
The forgotten book,
It's available in all...
What was that called again?
Can't remember.
Let's talk Tuesday, because it was a remarkable night at Anfield, remarkable performance. It's exhilarating, and of course it is the stuff of legend. How did they do it? How and why did they achieve this?
Well, I mean, we all thought before the game that if any team in a stadium could do it, then it was Liverpool at Anfield. And I think we all kind of looked at each other after 7 minutes when Origi scored and thought, hang on a minute, this could be happening. 2005 is happening all over again, and so it proved. But you know, as much as Liverpool were absolutely stunning and completely brilliant on the night, with a level of kind of desire that's frightening in a way. I saw Henderson got crocked, hurt his knee. 5 minutes later, he sprinted from the halfway line to shut down the centre-half with a shuddering tackle, and Liverpool won the ball.
And he couldn't walk when it happened.
And he could barely...
You thought he's got to come off.
Yeah.
You look at it, think he's got to come off.
He symbolised for me that night everything that Liverpool were about that night. But as much as Liverpool were stunning, I was astonished at the way Barcelona just completely folded. I mean, spineless, cowardly, I would say. The way they...
Were they overwhelmed by the way Liverpool approached it, by the atmosphere?
Yeah, but you look at those players, Neil, Messi, Suarez, Busquets, Piqué. They've all been on the big stage for decades, and they've been in bigger games than that. You know, they just crumbled. But that is that is kind of the force of nature that Liverpool are. When they get to that level, that they can blow any team away. The level of belief in that dressing room is just astonishing, and that will make it today, I think, hard to swallow. We spoke to Trent Alexander-Arnold after the game, and you know, we were saying surely there can be no regrets about the way you've performed this season, and he admitted no, there can't be, but it will still hurt.
Yeah.
And it will do.
I thought Barca crumbled physically more than anything else. I think what we're seeing is English clubs are just playing at a speed and an intensity and physical commitment that can't be matched at the moment.
Well, La Liga doesn't have that intensity, does it?
They don't face that at all. PSG couldn't even face it when Manchester United brought it to them. Bayern Munich were blown away by Liverpool in similar circumstances. You know, Spurs did it in the second half against Ajax, and I was at the first leg of the Barca game, and even though Barcelona won 3-0 and Messi was majestic, they were out. You were there, Mark. They were out on their feet at certain points.
They were. I mean, at one stage, I think it's both Messi and Suarez.
Yeah.
Suarez has got his hands on his knees, sort of doubled over, you know, sucking air in, you know, and you're looking at this thinking that no one takes them. No one takes them to where Liverpool took them to. Do you know what I mean? There's a thing about the most incredible thing about English football is that we have somehow persuaded all of these foreign players to play, and foreign coaches to buy in to this intensity that John is talking about. If you go back to Tottenham versus Inter Milan, where they're, I want to say, 4-0 down, and they're down to 10 men, and the goalkeeper's been sent off, and they got it back to 4-3, and if the game had carried on 2 minutes longer, it would have been 4-4, and if it had carried on 5 minutes longer, it would have been 5-4 to Tottenham. And there is something about, it was pointed out to me, that Inter Milan, when they came out for after half-time, they would never have ever played against a team that could be 4-0 down and down to 10 men that still thought they could win the game and that still went out on... You know, in Italy, that would have been shake hands at half-time, now we're not going to hurt each other, are we? You're not going to do anything stupid and we won't beat you 9-0. So, you know, and they would have settled for that, and that would have been it. And yet Tottenham came out and went, right, we'll have a go. And Gareth Bale's flying at them and stuff. And it's that sort of madness that you get in English football that John was talking about, that Liverpool... Barcelona didn't... There's nobody in Spain that will play like that against Barcelona.
No, and it's that plus we've got the best foreign coaches now, and I think they're bringing the best of the continental ideas in terms of possession and positioning on the pitch, and marrying it with that English intensity, and that's what Manchester City and Liverpool, and to an extent Tottenham, represent, and it's a sweet spot for English football at the moment. And once you take Messi out of the equation, there doesn't seem... I don't see anything in Europe at the moment, and I'd think over the next 2 or 3 years it's going to compete with it. Any team with Messi can always beat anybody, but Barcelona apart, I don't see anyone competing with it. And I think we could see weeks like this week not becoming commonplace in terms of the storylines, but in terms of English clubs getting to finals, I think this could be another era.
Yeah, we'll talk about the other...
we all think they're soft. Well, you know, everyone looks at Arsenal and goes, oh, well, they're still soft. Go to Valencia and put 4 goals past them. And you're looking at thinking, well, that's remarkable. They shouldn't be 4, you know, they shouldn't score 4 at Valencia, OK, 3 at Arsenal or whatever. They've scored 4 at Valencia.
Yeah, things are changing. English football strong again. Liverpool in the Champions League final, Tottenham in the Champions League final. We'll talk more about them. It's coming next. Welcome back. OK, let's talk Tottenham now in the Champions League final. Amazing achievement, creating history in the Amsterdam Arena, Johan Cruyff Arena, of course, with that staggering, breathtaking comeback. John, you were there. I was there. Martin was there. What? How do you rank this in terms of matches that you've seen, performances, emotion, and quality of the football and the comeback itself?
I mean, I was lucky because, unlike you lads, I didn't have to file on the whistle, so I could actually watch those last few minutes unfold.
You're endearing yourself to anyone here.
Sorry, just wanted to remind you. But look, I wasn't in Barcelona in 1999. I think you probably were, Steve. But in terms of emotions, extremes of emotions between two teams in one instant, I've never seen anything like it. You had
the nearest to 1999.
That could only sort of compare to it, because you had this you know, the stadium was incredible. It was almost as powerful as Anfield the night before. The local fans were making incredible noise. Had this brilliant young team, and when Lucas Moura scored that goal, it was just like you pulled the plug out of a huge sound system. In terms of the sound, I'll never forget it just going silent for the rest of my life. And it was a storyline, I think, that only, you know, the old cliche, the unscripted drama of live sport could come up with. You couldn't replicate that, the spontaneity of what happened there. And Spurs were so far away from that in the first half. You know, they were so far away from, let's say, the performance of Liverpool the night before, that intensity. They were so far away from Ajax's intensity, and then the contrast with the second half when they started to find belief. Of course, they put Llorente on and started to find a way. And I, you know, I actually wasn't sure if Llorente even had a good game or not, because he was so scruffy. You know, I was looking at his stats. I think he made 8 passes in the game. You know, he missed loads of chances, but he was the most effective man on the pitch, apart from Lucas Moura. Changed the game, and the way that the extra the stoppage time unfolded. You know, when Lloris goes up for the corner's defended. Ajax actually start celebrating. They start celebrating because they think the game's over, and the goalkeeper Onana, I think, just got caught up in that moment, and instead of doing the sensible thing of trying to kick the ball to the sides so his team can regroup, he just banged it straight down the middle. Really naive. And it comes back, and Lucas Moura, who was just sensational all night in terms of the speed and where he was getting onto every ball, it was a wonderful finish as well. And then to see those extremes afterwards was something that you know, as memorable as Anfield the night before. Don't think I'll ever see anything like that again. And a little bit like Liverpool, whatever happens now for Spurs, that's a moment. And for sport is about creating moments for spectators that will never be taken away from anyone that was at the stadium.
What I loved about it, Martin, compared to '99, was the jeopardy of it. The jeopardy of the situation in Amsterdam was you are out as things stand.
Yeah.
But if you score, Ajax are out and Tottenham are through. Whereas you compare that with 99,
it was an equaliser.
It's an equaliser while you're into it.
Yeah, extra time.
And that's the difference for me. It was the jeopardy of, well, and that moment that Johnny talked about, as soon as Moura scored the third goal, was that silence.
The silence was quite remarkable.
I don't think I've experienced that.
No, because in 1999, you've got to remember, half-ish the stadium are Manchester United fans. So Bayern Munich's team are flat out on the floor, but half the stadium is celebrating. Whereas in Amsterdam, there's this tiny little enclave of Tottenham fans in the far corner, and the rest of the stadium, because there wasn't even that reactive sort of cheer of encouragement that you get to, you know, inspire your team to come back at them, because everybody knew there's no time, this is it. It was already beyond, I think there's 5 minutes of injury time, and it's 95 and 20 seconds or something like that. It's over that, so there's nothing. You're gone. It was stagnant, and as John says, the remarkable thing about it is that you couldn't, at half-time, you couldn't see it come. That Liverpool performance, from the minute the game started to the minute it ended, Liverpool were a better team. And I'm not saying anyone fancied them to win 4-0, and I'm not saying we weren't all sitting there thinking Barcelona are going to get 1 and then they've got to get 5, and that's just going to be beyond them, and it's going to be a heroic failure, you know, heroic just falling short or whatever. There was that, but you were always, you know, writing as the match is going on, as we do, you were always talking Liverpool's performance up from the start to the finish. Yeah, it was different with Tottenham. You know, when you come to do the rewrite, you had to remove a lot of stuff from that was talking about the first half, where you just couldn't see Tottenham going through. They weren't playing as if they were going to go through. They weren't playing like Tottenham, really. They weren't playing like the Tottenham that we know. I mean, so suddenly to get that performance from somewhere in the second half, and you've seen Tottenham do it a few times in Europe. Second half comebacks and stuff like that. He must be a phenomenal guy. Operator at half-time, Pochettino. Or Harry Kane, because there was all the stuff about Harry Kane's speech as well, but I think sometimes that's, you know, the manager doesn't want to take the credit for it, so he says, "Oh, Harry Kane was wonderful," or whatever.
Yeah.
But
What did we make of Pochettino a couple of days later? Press conference talking about his own future, which he'd done before the game. He certainly teased. Minimum, I think we would accept, is teased. The boys who were previewing the game went back to Pochettino for clarification, and he said, "No, I could walk away after this. I can't keep producing miracles." But on Friday for Saturday's newspapers, Steve, that this was the whole. This was Pochettino talking about his own future in his words, given the time, and he said, "Yeah, this could be it. I might walk away in the summer." What do we take from this? What is he getting at?
Well, it was astonishing, for starters, to pick this moment of all moments. You know, Tottenham probably having the greatest night of their lives, and for it then almost immediately to be overshadowed by that is not something you would expect from Pochettino. Jose Mourinho, yes. I think he's thinking, look, if I do, we've reached the final. If I do manage to win it with Tottenham, you know, I'm going to still be in the same situation basically with Daniel Levy and the policy that Tottenham have about transfers and cash and resources. I'm still going to be in the same situation, and I sensed a deep frustration there that he feels with a bit more he can be even better himself, and he can take a team like Tottenham maybe to greater heights. And I think that's obviously a deep, deep frustration, which, in a way, makes it very puzzling that we're led to believe that he didn't really give Manchester United the come on when there was a possibility to go there. Yet, just a few weeks after United have made a questionable appointment of Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, he's then putting his future back on the open market. Really strange. Really strange.
What I can't understand is this idea that he hasn't got money to spend. Whereas if you talk to Tottenham, they'll tell you, well, he definitely has got money to spend. It's just the manager chooses not to sign players or not to spend the cash available to him. But they were arguing till they're blue in the face. There is money available for transfers. His office is next door to Daniel Levy's at that training ground. It is next door. Why publicise? Why make this very, very public? They were cuddling. Daniel Levy and Poch were cuddling each other on the turf and in the dressing room. The dressing room itself is, which of course they're entitled to publish. So why aren't they having those conversations? Why is this being played out in public? I mean, it's perfect for us. Don't get me wrong, but why aren't they having those conversations upstairs at that training ground where their offices are adjacent?
Yeah, and your point about the transfers, Ash, from what I understand, Lucas Moura was a transfer that Poch actually wasn't sure about and had to kind of be forced on him. So clearly there's more than meets the eye to this narrative that he's not getting the players that he wants. And I was thinking, what would it have been like if a player had done this? You know, if Harry Kane had played in a game like that or after a game like that, then sort of said, oh, I might have to leave Spurs and taken all the attention on him. I think we'd be destroying a player for that selfishness. And
Adebayor did, I don't know if you remember, Adebayor did just that
at Arsenal?
After, I think, the 2009 Champions League semi-final, second leg against Manchester United. I think it was that game. It may, and it was Dave Heitner that night.
And the Champions League final when Real Madrid, well, last year, Gareth Bale and Ronaldo ended up talking about their futures afterwards. And we all went away going, oh, well, that's the craziness of Real Madrid. You know, you got superstar players who think they're bigger than the club and they talk about their themselves.
A week later, Ronaldo's in his Juve shirt.
He's off. And there was, you know, much as I admire Pochettino, and I get that one of the things that makes him a really great manager is he uses so much emotion in his management. He brings that kind of emotional connection with players and emotion in the way that Klopp does to the dressing room. So I think he maybe rides high on emotion sometimes and speaks from the heart, but surely he's got to censor himself in this week of all weeks and not make the story about him.
That seemed to be a defined strategy, though, to do that, didn't it? That seemed to be something that was not off the cuff.
It's a selfish strategy.
He was kind of that was on the agenda.
How will Levy react to it? Will he just accept that? Yeah, he's an emotional. Pochettino's manager is clearly an emotional guy, and you live with it because he's just taken his team to the Champions League final. They're in the Champions League next season, or does he try to rein him in?
Said didn't say that he didn't want the England job. He ended up getting the bullet at the end of that season for not saying, I don't want the England job, which I don't know any Englishman who would turn around and say, I don't want the England job. But I don't think that's going to happen. It's a strange one, because you look at that and you'd think, if you were looking at motivations, or if you were cynical, there could be a situation, you take a sabbatical and then you're available. And if there was a very, very big English club that had just made an appointment that may or may not be the right one, and if there was a very big English club that might get to Christmas and think, this isn't going as we thought, if you're halfway through your sabbatical, you are rather in the box seat for that certain big English club. That would be being very cynical. But I cannot think of a single reason why you would suddenly start talking like that if there wasn't some sort of longer-term strategy. Because I take John's point about he sometimes speaks from the heart, but I don't think he's an emotional man like, say, Jose is. I think a lot of the time with Jose, people thought there was great calculation in what he said, when actually he just had the raving hump about something, and he couldn't
blurted it out.
He couldn't not go there, basically, you know. So if he had the raving hump with Pogba, he couldn't not go there. If he got asked about Pogba, he couldn't go, no, I'm not gonna. This is not. He had to say it. I don't think Pochettino's like that. I do think he's very
more measured.
More measured in what he says.
Definitely.
And I can't think why you would talk about your future unless you wanted to get a message out there that said, you know, things could be different in 6 months' time.
Is it a bit early for us, Steve, to start talking about runners and riders for the Tottenham job?
Possibly, yeah. Yeah, but I mean,
I don't know how to work manager, actually, who they went for before. Special one.
Oh, right.
Went for him before, didn't they? He left Chelsea first time around in 2007,
I'm not sure you would go from Poch to Mourinho, would you?
No.
That'd be an extreme.
That'd be difficult, but maybe listen Martin's conspiracy theory on where Poch might end up and the timeline on that.
But he's on to a bit. OK, I think the point I'm trying to make, he's on. As I see it, he's on to a good thing at Tottenham. Tottenham on to a good thing with Pochettino as their manager.
That team...
Everything's heading in the right direction. OK, you've lost 19 times this season, but everything's actually heading in the right direction. You've just reached the Champions League final.
I think that Tottenham team probably next season, if it is going to bridge that gap between City and Liverpool, needs a bit of, you know, an input of you know, new players. But
that's like every team in the summer.
But apart from that, I'm not talking 5 or 6. I'm talking maybe 1 or 2, small tweak. On the basis of what we know about Tottenham making money available, and it's not because the stadium's been built that there's just nothing in the pot left, I think there would be the kind of funds available to make those 2 sort of purchases. So I'm not really sure if that's not the nub of the matter. I don't know what is. No,
sure. OK, interesting week for Tottenham, an interesting week, interesting way to finish the week, and a week when they've reached the Champions League final. Of course, they play Liverpool in Madrid on June the 1st. OK, Manchester United, they used to be a Champions League team, not anymore. More on them next. Welcome back with us this morning, Martin Samuel, Steve Bates and John Northcroft. Let's just remind you what's in the papers. If you don't support Manchester City or Liverpool, probably you can walk straight past the newsagents this morning, because it's all about the final day shootout. Pep's dream to defend the Premier League title this afternoon. They play the final game, of course, at Brighton. Liverpool are at home to Wolves, all the kickoffs at 3 o'clock, snooze control. Pep says he's sleeping like a baby. John was at the press conference of Jurgen Klopp and Pep Guardiola on Friday. The Crown, it's in your hands. Say this story dominated, as you'd expect, the Premier League's Judgment Day, dominating this morning's back pages. Sleeping Beauty, back of the Sunday People. Andy Dunn's column, he says the brilliant Pep makes the style shine like no other boss in the Premier League. Daniel Taylor's column this morning says, if Liverpool's brilliance falls short, when will relentless Manchester City side ever be caught? Well, who knows? We'll find out the answers to the title race a little bit later. This afternoon, Sunday Times, it's the annual guide to wealth. It's the rich list, the 2019 rich list, which has made it onto the front of John's paper, Sunday Times. And it says here, Andy Carroll is worth more than Raheem Sterling. Let me tell you, he isn't. But financially, according to the Sunday Times, he's worth a few quid more. Not for much longer, because Raheem's on a big contract. Andy Carroll on his way out of West Ham at the end of the season, I would imagine. OK, let's talk Manchester United, Steve. Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, because you've seen him this week in the build-up to today's final game at Old Trafford against Cardiff. Let's ask you, because you cover Manchester United relentlessly, religiously, and have done for a long, long time. You know, you've known Solskjaer for a long time, since the beginning of his Manchester United career as a player. Is this working? What's got to change at Manchester United, and is he the man to change it?
Well, he's managing United at possibly the worst possible time in the last sort of, well, I would say since Fergie arrived in 86.
We weren't saying that when they beat PSG away.
No, but
come on,
listen,
we weren't.
You've only got to look back, not just at this season. Look at where United have been since Fergie left in 2013. 5 managers now, is it? 4 managers in 6 years. The mistakes keep being made, in my opinion. Everybody's looking at the recruitment, but what about the recruitment of the managers? You know, they've tried everything now. They've gone outside. They've come back inside now to a club. Solskjaer was undoubtedly had a major impact at the club, but I think there was still a suspicion there that, you know, United were probably right to make their stance at the beginning that they would let this process go to the end of the season and then make the choice. They didn't do that. And now they find themselves in a mess. Now, people might say, well, you couldn't possibly not give him the job after 10 straight wins. But my point is that, you know, were they really seriously intent on appointing Solskjaer when they got rid of Jose in December? I suspect not. So if he wasn't your ultimate manager to take over, why be persuaded by results against probably teams that, you know, you would expect even a poor United side to beat? I think he's been landed with an absolute huge job. There's so many problems at the club, not just on the pitch, but behind the scenes for me as well. I think the recruitment strategy is flawed completely. And they just don't seem to have, to me, the same kind of levels of executive management that they do at City and Liverpool. And I think that's the big problem, not just on the pitch. I think it's behind the scenes where there just doesn't seem to be a cohesive strategy. And unfortunately, Solskjaer now is in this position where he's going to have to manage and oversee a kind of complete change in philosophy, in the way they buy players, and also try to find an identity on the pitch. I mean, if you ask any of the guys around the table, how do Man United play? I don't think we're really able to give you a defined answer. You know how City play, you know how Liverpool play, and Tottenham. There's a defined strategy there. There's a playing pattern that they stick to. And when players go in and out of the team, they bring somebody in to play the same way. Whereas at United, you feel that if they bring a certain player in up front, like Lukaku, then they have to play a different way than if, say, Sanchez or Rashford is leading the line. It changes with personnel. I don't think you can have that kind of philosophy at a club. You have to have a playing style and stick to it and have the players to do that. United clearly haven't. You know, they've got a huge summer in front of them, and it's not just 2 players. They need probably 6, 7, 8 players. And I think Solskjaer, I sort of fear for him in the longer term, because you know for sure that this is not going to be a quick fix. This will not be sorted out by the start of the season.
Do Manchester United feel tired as a football club, John? And I say that in the way that Liverpool, they've got this bracing approach to playing the game. It's refreshing. City, of course, it's their methods. Steve talked about this playing style. Of course, it's well established under Guardiola, and of course everything that feels so new about Tottenham, because this run to the Champions League final itself, their new stadium, their new training ground, which of course they're also very, very proud of. does that leave Manchester United lagging behind what these other we would argue Liverpool, Manchester City and Tottenham are the three most progressive clubs in English football at this moment in time?
I think tired is a very good word, because it's not just on the pitch, it's off the pitch. They look so tired, where, you know, we're talking about Pochettino, Klopp and Guardiola. They've all got superb structures around them. They've got people to help them with recruitment, do recruitment for them. They've got top-class executives on the football side helping them make football decisions. And United are still structured the way they were in Fergie's era. You know, I remember Ed Woodward saying to us when he took over in Thailand back in 2013, you were on the trip as well, Steve, saying to us that he believed in the great manager model of a football club. And you thought to yourself, what you believe in having Alex Ferguson? Well, you know, we all believe in that, but that's not a blueprint to run a football club. And 6 years later, they're still there. They don't have a director of football. The search for the director of football has been absolutely farcical this year. Something we were told was going to happen even when Josie was there, and they've now done exactly the wrong thing in appointing, you know, done it the wrong way around, appoint the manager first, and then they're trying to get the manager to help them identify the director of football, which is an elementary mistake when you're structuring a club. And 6 years on, Ed Woodward himself doesn't seem to have developed any more nous about signing players, strategising than he had when he arrived. And that sounds harsh. He's a brilliant man in many ways, but I haven't seen the football mogul sort of develop the way that he wanted to. He wanted to be Daniel Levy, and I haven't seen that come. So United, as Steve said, now face a summer where they're going to have to get rid of a lot of players before they even start signing. You've got to go through that squad and start weeding them out. And you've got players on huge wages. So that takes a director of football to not only help to identify the ones to get rid of, but just do deals, just do clever deals, like City did in that era where they were getting rid of Adebayor and Rocky Santa Cruz, and they took the hit. They actually paid their wages. They did deals with clubs just to get them out of the building. United need that. And then they need to start signing players. And it's a massive job. And they've got Ollie in the middle of it, who has got huge qualities as a person who knows the Manchester United way. But not only, he's a rookie in terms of being a manager of a big club. And then you're asking him to do the other stuff as well. I mean, I think anyone would drown in it. And that's the problem they've got. They are, as you say, Ash, they're tired off on the pitch, but they're tired off the pitch as well. And I think they need to start again. I think they just need to fundamentally take the hit that they are not going to be Liverpool and Manchester City for the next 2 or 3 years, but actually at last get something in place that will get them back to being a
I think they've been blindsided by their own kind of obsession with doing commercial deals and making money off the pitch. They've completely lost sight of the end game, which is to have a team on the pitch.
Get the football right.
That wins. But there is this kind of feeling at Old Trafford that whether United are winning or losing on the pitch has no bearing on their commercial power to do deals.
Edward Wood said that.
He's already told investors and shareholders that. Now, when you're starting from that base point, I think you're in real big trouble, particularly when you've got progressive, forward-thinking clubs like City and Liverpool who clearly have got a plan. Yep. United's... Well, what's United's plan? It's just chaos.
Would you have that conversation tomorrow? I'd be tempted, if I was in Ed Woodward's position, whatever happens against Cardiff this afternoon, to pull Solskjaer in tomorrow and say, Ollie, have we made a mistake?
Well, what's Ollie going to say? Yeah.
It's how you react. No, of course. But it's how you react to that kind of question. Someone questioning you to that level, saying, we're not sure here.
I just don't think that's what Ollie Gunnar Solskjaer needs at the moment is to think that his bosses are looking at him going, oh...
But Huddersfield last weekend, wasn't it, last Sunday? You would think... You couldn't know there isn't a Manchester United fan in the world who wouldn't look at that performance and think, hold on a minute, have we made a mistake? Have our club made a mistake?
This is not good. But at the same time, it was... I totally take Steve's point that they could have easily just waited until the end of the season. If they'd have waited until the end of the season, they probably wouldn't be giving it to Ollie now. Having said this, at the time it was this irresistible. You know, if you were writing at that time, don't give it to Solskjaer. This could be a terrible mistake. You were out on a limb, and I've been out on a limb on a number of occasions over another number of issues, but I wasn't actually out on a limb on that one. I was with everyone else. You're looking at it going, was it 14 matches in the end or something like
Best
that?
away record in the history of Manchester United,
record in the history of Manchester United. And you go, well, you've got to give it to this guy. You've got to try and keep this momentum going and endorse this momentum and everything like that. And then since then, and you're looking at that and thinking, he can't be any different. It can't be that he was given the job and he has changed. No. So they have changed, and that's. I mean, that is the problem with the United. You've got to look at. Alex Ferguson had a philosophy, and I can't quote it on here because it contains a very rude word, but it involves getting certain people out of the club. That was his. That was his style of management. Get rid of any, and then there was a word, and that's what Solskjaer needs to do, because quite clearly he's got a few of them. He's got people that signed new contracts and then suddenly disappeared off the face of the earth for him, and other people that spend more time talking about where they'd like to go than talking about Manchester United, and they're treating Manchester United like a relegated club. You know the way that players talk about relegation and relegated clubs as if they were nothing to do with it when they're there.
I'm too good.
You know, well, I've got to look at my future now because I'm not a championship player. And you're thinking, well, you pretty much look like one this season, mate. That's why your team's going down. But they talk about it as if it was something that happened over there and they're here. And that's what the Manchester United players are. Because they're not going to... he's very unhappy that he's not in the Champions League next season. You're thinking, well, whose fault is that?
But at least all he knows what a Manchester United player should look like in terms of character and motivation. But getting superstar players out of football clubs isn't always easy.
Isn't easy.
I also think there's also a danger that Solskjaer is and I like Ollie a great deal. I think he's a man of intelligence and integrity, but he is a former player who was from an era where they were supremely successful basically because of one man. I think there's a tendency to be always looking back now. Oh, how was it
in
1999? How did we do it then? How did we do it then? How did we win the title that year? And how did Fergie manage to win it in 2013? That's gone. Forget it. Park it. Put it away in a box. We're in a different era of football now. We're a completely different era of football. Ed Woodward's now appointed 4 managers. 3 of them haven't worked successfully enough to warrant them staying. The Glazers were told absolutely adore Ed Woodward for what he's done for the club and the commercial...
Commercially, they're still the number one, aren't
they? Are.
I mean, if it was a league table for commercial success,
it looks like
Manchester United would be like they were.
He's bomb-proof. It looks like he's bomb-proof. But could he be the problem?
Well, take him away from the football.
Yeah, put him back in charge of the commercial department and get somebody in who has who's a proper football guy to.
He's not going to go back
to lead
the
this
commercial department, is he?
No, he's not, Neil.
He wants to pick. He's not. It's like Disneyland. He wants to pick the managers.
But they've tried everything else. They've tried changing the manager. They've tried changing the players. They've bought world record signings. Yet he's the one constant, and for 6 years it's been a mess.
But that brings you to the biggest problem, which is the Glazers, because they're the only ones really that are going to remove Ed Woodward. So you go all the way back and you realise that the biggest thing that needs to change is the ownership.
All I would say, I mean, we were having this conversation before. The only thing I would say about Ed Woodward, and I take everybody's points about strategy and an overall bigger picture and stuff like that, but on the individual decisions that we now look at and go, God, well, that was disastrous, wasn't it, Alexis Sanchez? But at the time, you thought, getting Alexis Sanchez, when Manchester City wanted him, who were 20 points ahead of Manchester United at the time, with Pep Guardiola, who was his manager at Barcelona, and have got more money than anyone in real terms because of their funding. We're all looking at it thinking, well, that was a bit of a coup, really. I mean, I don't know how they managed to do that. Now, I've never
Well, they managed it because they're paying him $500,000 a week.
That's the wrong way.
And City wouldn't do that because they knew it would completely shatter the spirit and everything about the dressing room.
But Steve, the only way, see, this is where we're in a bit of a catch-22, don't you think? Is that because it's Europa League next season, right? They're the only team of the six, the big six, as well, you know, the elite six, or whatever we want to call it. They're the only team of that six. If Arsenal win the Europa League, say Arsenal were to win the... I mean, there's no guarantee about that, but Arsenal could win the Europa League, and that leaves Manchester United the only ones that are not in the Champions League next season. So they're offering Europa League football with Ole Gunnar Solskjaer. Now, if Real Madrid are in the market, and you could go and work with Zinedine Zidane, and there's Ole Gunnar, he's a legend in Manchester, but I'm not sure he's a legend, you know, if you're in Italy or somewhere else. And there's all of this, and the only way they can get out of it, if they haven't got a director of football in this overarching, coherent strategy, it's got to sling a load of money at it again, which is sort of what's got them into the problem in the first place. Yeah. It just keeps slinging money at it, because that's the only way you're going to get anyone to go there.
It doesn't work, though.
Yeah. No. Guys, you mentioned Alexis Sanchez. He's one of my favourite stories this morning. I'm not undermining Ken Lawrence's exclusive on the back page of The Sun, but it's a great story. It says Alexis Sanchez and Paul Pogba at the centre of a cash-for-goals conflict, ripping Manchester United's dressing room apart. Sanchez is on £75,000 per goal. Right. I can't remember his last goal.
He's got one this season.
He's not making much on that.
Cash for goals at the end of the season, someone wins 27.5 quid.
So he's saving the money, good business.
But he is getting by on 505 grand a week, though.
But buying Sanchez, you know, by buying Sanchez, United now put themselves in a position where every player that's negotiating a new contract wants, I want what he's on. Yeah, or more. Yeah. OK, we need to move on. We're going to talk Europa League final next. Arsenal will play Chelsea. It's in Baku. Why are they playing there? Talk about that. It's coming next. OK, let's talk Europa League final now, because Arsenal and Chelsea have successfully made it through. We're playing the final 2,500 miles away in Baku. It's a long trip to make for supporters of both clubs. UEFA have attempted to defend the decision and outline some of the reasons behind it in a statement which they released on Friday. I don't think Martin takes great store by it, judging by that little chuckle.
Snort.
Yeah,
snort of derision.
A snort. How do we feel about it? Because it's something we as UEFA points out, you can't predict the two teams that will reach the final.
Well, I mean, Klopp talked about it at his press conference, and actually he said, yes, you can, because he said, right. You know, he brought up Kiev, and he said, let's face it, it's teams from Western Europe that are going to be in these finals. Therefore, they should be played in Western Europe. Now, I actually don't agree with that, in the sense that, you know, Azerbaijan, the countries in the east, they're part of the football firmament as well. They have every right to host tournaments and finals, just like Western European countries. We can't be Western-centric about it. But there's the reality of the fans in the middle of all of this. There's the reality of 6,000 tickets per club, you know, a 2,500-mile round trip, 6-hour car journeys from Tbilisi being your best option. I mean, and fans that get fleeced all the time with these ticket prices. That, to me, is the biggest issue. And I think we've now got to look at some way of subsidising fans. If we're going to have finals in far-flung places, in terms of where the finalists come from, UEFA, but also probably the clubs have got to start easing the pain for fans, whether that means clubs paying for charter flights or putting some money towards their travel. I think that's got to be the next step. And I was speaking to Tony Barrett about this. Tony is a bridge between the fans and the club at Liverpool, and that's something he's quite keen on. You know, someone at a big club who's thinking about this, and I think it is the next step. The fans participate in the club's success, so maybe the club should be giving them something back, or UEFA should be giving them something back. If UEFA want to have a final in Azerbaijan, fine. It's
a good point. You know, I haven't got the figures to hand, and I actually don't think it's been confirmed yet, but Liverpool and Tottenham will make more than £100 million each just from the Champions League run.
Yeah, I think they make
this season
extra 12 million for getting to the final. So, you know, as Tony was saying, maybe in the future we could look at something where you could put some of that money towards subsidising planes or ticket prices. And certainly, I think Arsenal and Chelsea get 4 to 8 million for getting the Europa League final.
Because that wouldn't have been budgeted for in their pre-season sort of assessment of what they're going to earn from
Charters
the season.
And planes.
So, if it's money they weren't guaranteed.
But in Baku, it wouldn't make any difference because one of the issues with Baku is you can't get the airspace. You can't get the airspace and you can't get the numbers through the airport. So it's a completely unsuitable venue. You've got a situation with Mkhitaryan where he might not be able to get a visa because of the problem with Armenia. So how you could ever have a competition before establishing whether everybody who competes in that competition would be able to come to the final venue. I don't know how you can select Azerbaijan when there is if an Armenian player is in a team and Mkhitaryan is in the Arsenal team and they know he's in the Arsenal team from a year before the tournament is played. So this problem could have arisen from then. Those 2 points and UEFA saying, see, it's not our fault. We can't get the people through the airport. Well, it is your fault because you would have known that when you gave it to Baku. And I totally agree with Jurgen Klopp that you can predict it because in about February, March, you know who the 8 quarter-finalists are. There shouldn't be any decision on where the final is being played until March. And when you know where the 8 quarter-finalists are, you can look at that and go, and I think the easternmost was Slavia Prague. And so you can go, right, OK, the westernmost was Benfica, the easternmost is Slavia Prague. There's our parameters. We will find a final venue in that area. And you can do that. Now, I realise Wembley might be booked out with pop concerts, or Old Trafford, you know, Manchester United can't even get in their own ground if it ends up on July the 25th, can they, or something? They can't play their Europa League ties at home or something because there's pop concerts or whatever. But you'll find somewhere. There's a lot of stadiums in Europe. You'll be able to find somewhere. And then, that's when you announce where the final is. And then this idea that you've got to... And it's only to do with branding. It's only to do with some silly slogan, "Together to Baku," right? Together to Baku, you know, nothing... Via Frankfurt. Via Tbilisi in a 6-hour car journey, via Istanbul, via, you know... I was trying to get from... At one stage, I was trying to get from Baku to Madrid, and it was 3 planes, you know. The only
How are you doing? I'm going via Frankfurt.
I'm coming back home and then going again. The only good thing is, there was one. I was waitlisted on. There was one flight, direct flight from Baku to Madrid, that was completely fully booked really early, which must be all the UEFA officials. And I'm delighted to tell you that was cancelled because they couldn't get the airspace. So they're all scrabbling around to try and get out of Baku as well, UEFA. So that's the only silver lining.
There is a God.
Is that they're stuffed as well, but you can do this. You know, if the Americans can sort the World Series out with the last game on the Sunday night, and the World Series starts on the Tuesday, on the Sunday night, the biggest baseball match of the year, less than 2 days' notice. Well, UEFA need a 2-year lead time to where the final's going to be. It's nonsense. You can go at the quarter-final stage. Who's in the quarter-finals? Right, that's their area, and we'll find a venue for it in there.
I am not one to jump the gun, as you know, but I'm just thinking about the Super Cup, the 2019 Super Cup, because we'd have to start thinking about our travel arrangements for that. Where is that?
It was Tbilisi last year, wasn't it?
Right, that's well and good last year, but this is
this is going to be an all-England Super Cup, isn't it? I forgot. Yeah, that's handy.
Yeah.
Oh, that'll be good. Spurs versus Arsenal in Kazakhstan.
Yeah, Wembley would be the ideal venue, I'd say, but...
Yeah, there you go. Now, so why can't you, knowing that it's going to be 2 English clubs, why can't you now...
Play at Wembley?
Well, either play it at Wembley or play at Aston Villa or play at...
Hampden, Old Trafford.
Play it somewhere. Old Trafford, there you go. Well, I was just thinking of old FA Cup semi-final venues. Play it at Old Trafford. You know, play it somewhere in England, and there you go. Why can't you? You know.
Would you like to know where we're heading in late August?
I think it's somewhere. It's somewhere east, isn't it? Again.
Somewhere
east again.
Istanbul.
I think
Istanbul.
Istanbul's the European Cup final next year. I think it's Istanbul.
Istanbul. You'll be there on August
I
14th.
think I might be involved with the Ashes there. You know,
Steve?
I think. I don't know.
Is that
I don't know.
possible? The 14th?
Maybe.
Yeah, it's not a Sunday story,
No,
is it? The
it's
Super
a
Cup.
Wednesday, isn't it? Midweek.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I might be. I might be there. Yeah.
Yeah, well, keep us informed.
Yeah,
Keep
yeah,
us
exactly.
updated.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, you know.
Yeah, quick word on who needs to win this more. This will be Sarri's first trophy if he finally cracks it. He's got Chelsea back into Champions League, but Arsenal, this is the backdoor entrance. This is the insurance policy to get back into Champions League football next season. Is it more important to them to win it?
I think it is, in the sense that at Chelsea, you get the sense that nothing will change independent of whether Sarri wins it or not, and they've got the transfer ban and all that kind of stuff. Whereas with Arsenal, what it would do for Emery and his building and signing players in the summer would be huge, and I think they could build on that, whereas, as I say, Chelsea will just be Chelsea, whatever happens.
Yeah, sure. OK, we'll look forward to the Europa League final and the Super Cup, of course, August the 14th in Istanbul. OK, next up, we're going to look to matters closer to home. It's next weekend. It's the FA Cup final. It's on Saturday at Wembley. It's Manchester City against Watford. More on that next. Welcome back. Let's look ahead to next weekend. Next Saturday's FA Cup final. It's Watford against Manchester City. Martin's pleased it's at Wembley Stadium. A little bit closer time for us, isn't it? No travelling. Not much travelling time. Just having a look at it, it could be a bruising encounter. Watford taken no prisoners this season. They picked up more cards than any other side. 76 yellow, 3 red. One of them was Troy Deeney, Watford against Arsenal. He's back for the FA Cup final. He kind of made us dream a little bit, didn't he, when he took control of their FA Cup semi-final against Wolves. But can they take control against Manchester City? Is there a way for them to win it?
Well, I suppose there is a way for them to win it, but it's going to be difficult.
I think Wigan Man City would be, if you want to maybe show.
But Man City Man City then weren't together like they are now. I mean, there was a lot of divisions by the time Man City got to that final. You know, there was a lot of divisions between Mancini and the club, Mancini and individuals within the club. If you remember the press conference after the game, where he absolutely slaughtered the head of communications, who's sitting next to him as far as I remember.
Started moving away from him, actually, symbolically.
So it was a divided club when they lost to Wigan. This isn't a divided club, and their results against Watford over the last couple of seasons would suggest they've got the beating of them. And I don't think that's particularly... don't think I'm particularly saying anything radical there, really.
No. But we don't want this to become Watford's big day out at Wembley Stadium next weekend, do we? They want to go there and believe that they can cause an upset and beat one of the best teams that the English football has seen.
City. Yeah, I mean...
Well, it's not Watford, is it?
No. Well, listen, you'd be mad to think anything else could happen other than a City win. I think you get the feeling when you speak to City's players and the manager that they're just intent on creating more history for the club. Guardiola's constantly going on about the fact that City have really only started this journey to catch up with United in Manchester and Liverpool in terms of winning titles, and he knows it's every title they win takes them one tiny step closer to the other clubs who've got rich histories of winning things. That's all he's intent on. So I cannot see anything but a City win. I was thinking that Wolves maybe would have had a better chance of giving City a game at Wembley.
They've got a good record, haven't they?
Yeah, with the style of football they play, it would have been a hugely open game, obviously. But I think, you know, the Watford manager, Fabi Crastia, he will try to come up with a plan to beat them. But I just don't think Watford have got the personnel. I mean, you know, Gerard Deulofeu did very well at Wembley, didn't he? But he's just won. City have got 5 or 6 of them. Yeah,
they have. Man City, of course, in the final, they can complete a domestic treble. But I'd just like to talk, actually, reflect on Football Writers' dinner on Thursday evening, because we heard from 2 Manchester City players, didn't we? Raheem Sterling being one of them, the other one, Nikita Paris, who won the female award. I thought she spoke brilliantly. And the way that there was an endearing innocence about the way that she spoke to a room full of football journalists and people who work in different aspects and different areas of the game, John. But I just thought she spoke so splendid and so well about her love of what was very obvious was her love of the sport. So forget everything else that goes around it and the circus that develops and envelopes the sport. But she clearly still loves the game that she grew up wanting to play, and now she is in that position. It
was powerful. I think you still get that when you speak to the women players, because they aren't really playing for money at this point in the development of the women's game. A lot of them have journeys a bit like Nikita's, where they've really had to battle to become footballers, and what's kept them going is that love of the sport. And she told the wonderful kind of evocative story, being a little girl in Toxteth and watching the boys playing out on the street and wanting to get outside and play with them. And then I think her next door neighbour it's finally invited her out, said, "Come on then, you're always watching us, come and play." And that was her love affair with football, and kicking the ball against her mum's windows and smashing them. And you got the sense that, I think she's 24 or something like that she still had that
25,
kind of that she still had that kind of mentality about the game, that mentality about football. And even when she was watching the compilation of herself scoring goals and breaking the Women's Super League scoring record, there was a kind of joy and innocence about that you listen to Raheem, and he's got his own very personal, very sort of genuine story to tell. But
we've become accustomed to Raheem.
We know it.
The point
we
I
know
was
it.
making.
No, exactly, Ash. Yeah, we know it. We've told it ourselves. We've interviewed him. We know the journey. He's a global superstar, and she's telling you the similar story, but from the point of view of someone who isn't a superstar and who's still, living a fairly normal life, but is an elite footballer, an elite athlete, and that's. I was like you. That was something that I went away and thought about, and listening to it, it would have melted the most cynical sort of football heart, because you could identify with it. I guess is what I'm trying to say. You could almost identify with being that kid, and you could see that she was still the same person.
Yeah, there was a definite purity and innocence about what she was saying, and I think the engaging thing about the women's game now is that as it's emerging, all of these players have got a story. They've all got a backstory, and I suspect that obviously with the Lionesses going to the World Cup this summer, we'll be hearing more and more of those stories. But yeah, definitely there was a good story to be told.
Yeah, it certainly was. It's an enjoyable night. Just quickly, let's go around the table. What's going to happen this afternoon? Is it Man City or Liverpool?
City.
I can't see City cracking.
City to beat Brighton, yeah.
Yeah, City to go down to the Amex. So we're off there in a few minutes' time, aren't we? We look forward to watching Man City at Brighton. Let's see if Brighton can do something this afternoon. OK, thanks very much for your time. Thanks. Good to see you, Martin. I'll see you in a few hours' time down at Brighton. Good to see you too, Steve. And John, thanks very much for joining us here this morning.
Sky Sports. Feel it all.